Hi everyone. Today I'll talk about a very important topic in OPS, that is preeclampsia and eclampsia. So let's look into preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is identified in 3.9% of all pregnancy. So what is preeclampsia? In order to diagnose preeclampsia, there is a criteria which is shown here. So either preeclampsia will have hypertension and proteinuria, then it is diagnosed as preeclampsia. And in order to say that there is proteinuria, it should be coming under any of these three category. That is, we say proteinuria if it is more than 300 milligram in 24-hour urine sample protein, or the protein creatinine ratio is more than 0.3, or also we could identify proteinuria by the dipstick method, and if there is 1 plus, then it is said to be proteinuria. So any of the condition, if it is satisfied, then it is proteinuria. As well as preeclampsia, it should have, the patient will have hypertension, which is in more than 20 week of gestation, the patient will be having hypertension, that is BP will be more than 140 millimeter mercury systolic, and diastolic will be more than 100. So that is one thing. Or instead of proteinuria, if a patient is having preeclampsia and also any of this, that is if the patient is having any end organ damage. So in end organ damage, the first it may be seen like thrombocytopenia, which is called platelet count less than 1 lakh, and maybe renal insufficiency because the kidney is failed, then that will be manifested at creatinine level which is more than 1.1 milligram per deciliter. Or if there is liver failure, then the liver enzymes will be twice elevated. And also if there is any cerebral damage, then it will be manifested as headache, visual disturbances, convulsions, and also lung failure can cause pulmonary edema. So I want to make this clear that if we want to see a patient with preeclampsia, it should be hypertension plus proteinuria. Or also the patient can be said have preeclampsia if proteinuria is not present, but there is any of this signs of end organ damage, that is the organ has been damaged, and any of this can cause preeclampsia. Okay. So now what is preeclampsia syndrome? Okay, in preeclampsia we'll have non-severe and severe. It is differentiated into non-severe preeclampsia and severe preeclampsia. So under non-severe, the mild and moderate cases of preeclampsia also comes under non-severe and severe preeclampsia. So the it has been differentiated into these two classes based on BP criteria, and also based on end organ damage. For making it simple, like if the patient is having less than 160 and 110 millimeter mercury of BP, then it is non-severe. And in case of non-severe, all the there will be no signs of end organ damage, that is everything will be absent. But in case of severe, it is BP will be more or equal to 160 to 110 millimeter mercury, and there will be signs of end organ damage. Okay, so this criteria is not based on protein or anything, it is just based on two things, that is based on BP and based on end organ damage. So that is it, and it is very pregnancy specific syndrome, and it can affect any organ system. So now we'll look into the risk factors for preeclampsia. So I have divided into this two table because here, seeing it, we can understand it is a risk factor, because like if there is any previous history of preeclampsia, or any past history of chronic hypertension, or the family history of hypertension and a chronic kidney disease, and these are all risk factors for preeclampsia. And here, these are also risk factors of preeclampsia, like primigravida patient, means the patient doesn't have any baby, it is the first time patient is pregnant. So what is this? Preeclampsia is a condition where to understand it now, I would say that it is like there is a problem with the placenta. Okay, so in primigravida patient, the patient is exposed to placenta for the first time, so that is a problem. And new paternity, what is new paternity? New paternity doesn't mean that the patient has been pregnant first time, but rather it means that the patient is pregnant for the first time with a new partner. So that is all called new paternity, and that is also a risk factor. And also patient diabetics is a risk factor because it can cause placentomegaly, and we know preeclampsia is a pathology of placenta, and we'll look into pathogenesis in the upcoming slides. And also syndromes like APLA is antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, and metabolic X syndrome. And also these pregnancies like twin pregnancy, molar pregnancy, Rh negative pregnancy are all risk factors, because in twin and Rh negative pregnancy we know there is placentomegaly like diabetes, and in molar pregnancy there is increased chorionic villi or increased trophoblastic tissue. So these are the risk factors for preeclampsia. So why we need to know the risk factors of preeclampsia? Because if a patient is having high risk, high chances of having preeclampsia, because means they are having more risk factors, then according to American College of Obstetrics and Gynecologists, there is a recommendation like aspirin should be given. The dose is 50 to 150, started from 12 weeks of pregnancy. It should not be started later than 16 weeks, and it should be continued throughout the pregnancy for patients who is at risk of having preeclampsia in future. And also there are some measures apart from aspirin which have been proven benefit in preventing preeclampsia, that is exercise, heparin and aspirin administration, and calcium supplementation. It should be not there. It should be given only if patients calcium are low. And smoking is said to be a protective factor for preeclampsia. It is because in smoking, it's like it upregulates the placental adrenomedulin, and which regulate the volume homeostasis. uh, that is smoking is protective factor for preeclampsia. And we'll understand in further, like in pathology there is thrombosis. So the smoking is helping not to cause thrombosis. And there are also measures which do not have proven benefits, so we should avoid this, like bed rest, salt restricted diet, antioxidants, fish oil. Heparin alone doesn't have any benefit. Rather, exercise should be asked for the patient instead of bed rest. So now the main thing, a very important thing, what is the pathogenesis of preeclampsia? Okay, so we know there is placenta, and placenta have villi. So between the villi there is intervillous space, and the maternal artery, which is a spiral artery, is coming between the intravillous space. So spiral artery is opening in the intravillous space, and the extravillous cytotrophoblast will replace this lining of the spiral artery, and this is called trophoblastic invasion. And because of this invasion there will be angiogenesis, and because of the angiogenesis the transverse diameter of the spiral artery is increased. So then this high resistance vessel is converted to low resistance vessel. That is a pathogenesis of normal pathology. Sorry, that is what is happening normally. But here what is in preeclampsia is that this angiogenesis is not taking place properly. Okay, so in preeclampsia the trophoblastic invasion is incomplete and the vascular remodeling is incomplete, which I mentioned in the last slide. It is normal thing, but here it is not happening. And what is the reason of not completing vascular remodeling or trophoblastic invasion is not happening? Because of two things. The angiogenic factors are decreased, that is vascular endothelial growth factor, platelet growth factor, and anti-angiogenic factors which are reducing angiogenesis, like SFLT1 and S-endoglin. These are increased, and also vasodilators are decreased, like nitric oxide, and vasoconstrictors are increased, like thrombosin E2 and prostacyclin. So these are the factors which are causing this pathology. So let's see. So because of that, angiogenesis is not taking properly, what happens? As I said, the vessels remain high resistance. It is not converting to lower resistance, and because of this there is high resistance vessel, there is vasoconstriction, and due to vasoconstriction the volume blood which is supposed to come to the intravillous space from the spiral artery should be more, but because of vasoconstriction it will be less. So less blood is coming to placenta, causing placental ischemia, and because of that the placenta will be very small and will be pale in color. And because of this ischemia there is inflammatory mediators released. So what happens once the inflammatory mediators are released? It will cause capillary endothelium. It will make pores, like it make the capillary endothelium very leaky. For example, it's like a pipe, and we have pores in the pipe. So what happens? The fluid will come out of the pore, and if the pipe contains fluid and sand, the sand will remain. Likewise, because the capillary endothelium is very leaky, the fluid will come out, and the collection of fluid in third space will have edema, and there is like sand remains, as an example. So the in blood the fluid will come out and the RBCs will remain. So there is hemoconcentration, and this hemoconcentration causes thrombosis in blood vessels, and this is a reason that hemoconcentration is there, and this lead to thrombosis, and this lead to multi-organ failure. Okay, so I hope this understand. So as I said, smoking is a protective factor because it is upregulating some placental adrenomedulins which will regulate this volume homeostasis. Okay, so in Williams it is mentioned like smoking is a protective factor. So I hope this is clear. So see, so because there is hemoconcentration and this is a pathology, diuretics are contraindicated in pregnant female with preeclampsia. We will not use diuretics. So these basically there are three theories explaining preeclampsia, that is altered vascular remodeling theory, genetic theory, altered immune response to paternal genes. Altered vascular remodeling theory, as we mentioned, and genetic theory. That is why we have these factors of like previous history, genetic factors, and we have altered immune response to paternal genes. That is why I said new paternity is a risk factor for preeclampsia. So see, in preeclampsia, there is hemoconcentration, as I mentioned. So what happens? Less blood is going. Of course, there is thrombosis and organ failure and organ damage. That is why that is a criteria of diagnosis of preeclampsia. I hope you understood. So there is less, because of this concentration, we'll have signs like less blood is going to brain of the mother, and because less blood is reaching the brain of mother, there is cerebral hypoxia, which is leading to convulsions. So we know in severe patient of severe preeclampsia, it will lead to preeclampsia, that is convulsion, and that this is a reason behind it, how it is happening. And also less blood is going to mother's kidney, and the renal blood flow will be decreased, and thereby the glomerular filtration rate is decreased. And once the filtration rate is decreased, the serum urea, creatinine, and uric acid in the blood will be increased. And also less blood is going, and we said preeclampsia is a pathology of placenta. There is uteroplacental insufficiency, which is causing less fetal blood flow, and because of that, IUGR means intrauterine growth restriction, and there is renal blood flow in the fetus is decreased. Renal blood flow of the fetus is decreased. Because of that, there is oligouria and also oligohydramnios. So oligohydramnios is also because of preeclampsia. So once we understood the pathogenesis of preeclampsia and why it is happening and all, we can there are some tests to predict preeclampsia. It means like if there is a patient who have risk factors, and we have to check whether this patient will have in future preeclampsia or not. So the most common test done is uterine artery Doppler of the uterine artery, and also there is one outdated test like giant rolls over test, like the patient is placed in left lateral position and asked to shift to supine position. But in normal, what happens is that in supine position, the uterus will compress the inferior vena cava, the BP is supposed to reduce, but in because in hypertension, the patient is having hypertension, the BP will be increased or equal to 20 millimeter of mercury. So that means the patient is having hypertension, and there are chances of patient to have preeclampsia. And also now the recent predictors we used in order to predict preeclampsia, that is, as we know, the in preeclampsia there will be increased anti-angiogenic factors. So if these are increased, vasoconstrictors like thrombosin, E2 are increased, and angiogenic factors which will be decreased, like vascular endothelial growth factor, placental growth factor, and nitric oxide and all is decreased, then we can predict preeclampsia. So once we made the diagnosis, then the management of preeclampsia, we already know it is we have to classification mild and severe preeclampsia. In mild preeclampsia, the non-specific treatment, and we have specific or definitive management. So definitive management for preeclampsia, because it is a pathology of placenta, what we have to do is that we have to immediately remove it. So means we have to terminate the pregnancy. So in mild, we'll terminate the pregnancy at 37 weeks or more, and non-specific treatment will be antihypertensive treatment once the patient is having a more than 150 to 100 blood pressure persistently. So we'll give antihypertensive treatment oral, and in severe preeclampsia we'll give IV antihypertensive treatment, and the criteria is that the BP of the patient, if at all in one reading, if it is more than or equal to 160, 110. And also we know in severe preeclampsia patient there are chances of having eclampsia, so we'll go for magnesium sulfate in order to prevent convulsion. And here the termination of pregnancy will be at equal or more than 34 weeks of gestation. So what is eclampsia? Eclampsia, as we know, it is a complication of severe preeclampsia. So a patient with severe preeclampsia once throws convulsions, which is generalized tonic-clonic seizures, it is called eclampsia. So we have in three stages we can have eclampsia, that is antepartum, that is during pregnancy, which is the most common of all the eclampsia and which is having the worst prognosis. We have interpartum eclampsia happening during the labor, and postpartum, that is after delivery, but it should be within the 48 hours of delivery. It means like if a patient is delivered and she's having convulsions after the 48 hours of delivery, then it might be another reason. We will not see it as eclampsia. So And signs of impending eclampsia, it means that the patient is not having eclampsia till now, but the patient is having preeclampsia, and she is admitted to the hospital. So if the female with severe preeclampsia shows any of this sign, then it means that it is a case of impending eclampsia and the patient can have eclampsia. So we have to manage this patient by giving magnesium sulfate in order to prevent convulsions. So these will be the signs. Any of the three signs can be present: epigastric pain, plus or minus nausea or vomiting. It is because this subcapsular hematoma, there is subcapsular hematoma, and this hematoma is stretching the liver capsule. Then the patient is feeling epigastric pain. And also, if there is a sudden onset of headache, of course the patient is having hypertension, she might be having headache, but here the headache is not responding to the usual treatment. So it is sudden onset headache, and it is because of the cerebral hypoxia. The blood is not reaching the brain, and any new onset of visual disturbance, it can be scotoma, blurring, diplopia, blindness, or anything, and it is because of hypertensive retinopathy. So any of these three signs shows that it is a case of impending eclampsia. And also we know, we have been saying that in a eclampsia patient, she will throw convulsions. And why the seizure is happening? Because we know it is a patient is having higher BP, and because of high blood pressure, it is causing vasoconstriction, and because of this vasoconstriction, the blood flow to the brain is reduced, which we already mentioned, and this is causing cerebral hypoxia. And because of cerebral hypoxia, the patient will have convulsions. That is why the patient is having seizures. So how to manage? So if a patient is already having eclampsia, it means that patient is having convulsions. The first step of management this is very important, that we have to secure the airway of the patient. It means that now the patient is having convulsions, there are chances that the tongue of the patient will falls backward and will obstruct the airway. So we have to secure the airway of the patient by putting a mouth gag, that is a device to open the mouth, and will aspirate any secretions, all the secretion, and put the oxygen mask, and will give oxygen by mask. Then the second step is to anticonvulsant therapy, that is magnesium sulfate, here to treat the convulsions. And then because the patient is having higher BP, will give IV antihypertensive therapy. The drug of choice is labetalol, and the definitive management, of course, in eclampsia and preeclampsia, everything, it will be termination of pregnancy. So here, in case of eclampsia, will go for immediate termination of pregnancy, and usually vaginal delivery. And then here vaginal delivery will go for epidural anesthesia, and will also catheterize a patient. And if the second stage of labor is prolonged, we don't want the patient to have another convulsion, so we'll go for forceps or vacuum delivery. Okay. So cesarean section is not indicated for a patient of eclampsia, but if there is any complications like fetal distress and all, renal failure and all, then we'll go for cesarean section. So we know the magnesium sulfate is a drug of choice for both preventing as well as treating convulsions. And why we use magnesium sulfate? It is because it is a central acting drug. It acts on the NMDA receptor in brain, and it causes cerebral vasodilation. We are having hypoxia because there is cerebral vasoconstriction. So this will treat it and decrease the hypoxia, thereby convulsions is treated. Also, this magnesium sulfate can block the calcium channel. So will not give magnesium sulfate along with calcium channel blockers, because it can cause respiratory arrest in the patient if they are using calcium channel blockers. And there is a status eclampticus. What is it? That we are giving magnesium sulfate to the patient, still the convulsions is not treated, it's not getting cured. So in that case, it is a case of status eclampticus. So in that case, the drug of choice is thiopentone sodium. So here, two diagrams. Here I would say it is the patient is having hematoma of the tongue because of the laceration during eclamptic convulsion. She is a patient of eclampsia. She had a convulsion, and because of laceration, she is having hematoma of the tongue, and because of thrombocytopenia, which contributed to bleeding. And here we can see a patient of preeclampsia. So antepartum preeclampsia, that is during her pregnancy, and the patient is nullipara, and here she have severe edema. So lastly, I hope it is clear. So we'll look into some questions. Should aspirin be given to all pregnant females to prevent preeclampsia? I said, like, if we having risk factors, in order to prevent preeclampsia, will give aspirin, but not to all pregnant females. So to all pregnant females, we do not give. And the second question, preeclampsia is most common in primic gravida or multigravida. I said in risk factor, primic gravida is a risk factor for preeclampsia because of mother is newly exposed to placenta, so and this preeclampsia is a placental pathology, so it will be in primigravida patient. And here there are two cases. If we have a patient of impending eclampsia, what will be our first step? And in a patient of eclampsia, what will be our first step? So in impending eclampsia, the first step will be, till now the patient is not having convulsions, of course, so our first step will be, in order to prevent the convulsions, so we'll go for magnesium sulfate. And in case of patient of eclampsia, already eclampsia, she's drawing convulsions, so the first step, as I said, we have to secure the airway of the patient. So that will be our first step. Thank you.